Alright, so while demonstrating this program, needless to say, I've just noticed a couple of bugs along the way. For clarity, I noticed that there was no paste option in the context menu if there were no files already in the target directory, so I've fixed that. As you can see, when I've put the card back in, it's remembered the last accessed folder, the reason being that I have got remember set to folder. It'll always remember the last accessed partition, but you actually make it so that the highlight rests on the last accessed item, if you wish. But before we go any further, it's time to mention the sponsor for this video, PCBWay. Head on over to PCBWay.com and you'll see that PCBWay are enjoying their 8th anniversary, and they have a host of exciting promotional offers for you to enjoy. PCBWay offer such diverse services as PCB prototyping, manufacture, CNC machining, and even 3D printing. So head on down to PCBWay.com today and join in the celebrations. In any case, I'm going to do a quick update, so I'm going to go back to the root directory. I should have a file called S3 loader. Of course, we've got the search facility here. I haven't demonstrated that yet. I'll quickly do that. So there's our update, today's update. I haven't changed the date yet, but anyway, this will fix those couple of bugs that I noticed. So this is how you'll install this beta. The easiest way to do it is to just put s3loader.xex onto the FAT on the SD card and run the file and just answer yes. Make sure that current version makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then the flasher hasn't recognized the ROM properly, so you probably shouldn't proceed. So let's reboot again. So now, if I copy a file, any old file, just press Ctrl C, and have we got an empty folder? Yes, there's an empty folder. So now we should have, there we go, we've got paste there. So if we paste, that file appears in the folder. Very good, very good. And as I said before, we can set the properties there. Let's make that one. Let's clear the archive and we'll go read only, apply. And then when we get the file information, you see that's got the protected flag and the archive flag is cleared. Right, now I said I was going to show you sort order. So we'll do this on this big directory here. So if we go into the context menu, and we pick sort order, which you can get at with Ctrl 0. So we'll come back out there, you can press Ctrl 0 if you like. And by default it's sorted by name. And we can change it to, let's sort by size. You won't see that on directories of course, but here we've got everything sorted in ascending size order. So the smallest file 62 bytes. And we're steadily climbing up to the megabyte range there. Or we can sort by file type if we wish. So let's go in again, sort by type. Car files at the top, exe, VHD, etc, etc, etc. Okay, so let's go back to sort by name. And you can see it's very quick at resorting the file. Now that changing the sort order in the file list here using that facility isn't persistent. As soon as you go into a different folder or reread that folder, it'll go back to whatever is set in this master setting, if you like. The persistent setting is in this menu here, and there's another bug there. We've got a check mark for some reason next to type here. That shouldn't be there, so I'm going to have to go away and fix that. Aren't videos just great for revealing bugs? I knew it would be anyway, but as you can see, it's if you ignore that check mark, which I'll go away and fix in a minute, it's currently set to name. So if you wanted everything to be the default sorted to be on size, you could select that there and you would come up with size. But normally it's defaults to name. Now, an exception to this rule, of course, if we check that we've got the history enabled, which it is the history folder. So we go in the menu again. So the history has been enabled. It's off by default, but if we open the history folder, which is a hidden folder, the default sort order here is reverse chronological order. So you can see that's the most recent file that we actually ran, the S3 loader XEX update. Prior to that, remember, we ran the Turbo Basic XL, Command Processor, Basic XL, etc, etc. So there's a reverse chronological list of the most recent things that we actually ran. If you find something there that you want to run again, you can just click on the shortcut and run it. And of course, conflicting entries will naturally overwrite themselves in this list. And the oldest ones, eventually when you exceed the limit, will just fall off the bottom of the list. So if you want to, you can record, keep a record of everything that you've executed in the loader. If you want to show all the files, even files that aren't actually natively supported by the loader, you can enable show all files. Now that should really trigger a reread of the directory, but it doesn't at the moment. And because we've turned that on, now if you go into the basic XL folder that we used before, when we saved that little Hello World program, that BXL file is actually visible. Now normally it wouldn't be, because the loader doesn't handle BXL files, it doesn't know what they are. But because we've revealed all files, it is. Now we can't run this kind of file. The loader won't know what to do with it if we try to open it. But it's there anyway if you need to be able to see it for file management purposes and that kind of thing. Now the other option, which should really be nearby, which isn't, is to show hidden and system files. So now we've revealed hidden and system files, we can actually see these special folders. These are hidden folders. We can verify that by getting the file information. It's got the hidden flag set. Those folders are now visible and you can get at them in the browser if you need to. But you've always got, even if they're not visible, which they normally aren't, you can always just use the context menu or the shortcuts to get into those special folders. And if the system volume information and all the other crap that Windows puts on the volume, that will become visible as well when you've got hidden and system files showing in the browser. Alright, so I've now gone in and enabled the PBI BIOS in the Ultimate 1 megabyte that we've got here. And there's some of those hidden files I was telling you about before, because we've still got hidden files revealed here. So anyway, as before, we can run disk images particularly effectively when we've got Ultimate 1 megabyte support here. So we just press enter on that one. You see we've booted the disk image, which has got the last word on it. So booted into DOS 2.5. So now we've got the Ultimate 1 megabyte PBI BIOS. What we actually have to do to go into the loader is go in here and press L. So let's make a new disk image. So if we go down in here into new image, we get a selection of common disk image sizes. Let's make a 360K double-sided, double-density ATR, similar to what you'd see the capacity of an XF551 disk drive, for example. So we press enter there. We'll give it the name XF DD test, let's call it. And that's going to create that image. And as you can see, it's very quick because it uses cluster pre-allocation. It doesn't actually write any data to the file. It simply allocates as many clusters as are required for the file on the disk. It doesn't actually, the contents of the file are completely uninitialized, which is fine for a disk image because you're going to write a blank file system to it anyway. But just something to be aware of anyway. So if you read sectors that haven't been written to in the disk image, you're likely to get completely uninitialized data, all kinds of crap. But that shouldn't be a problem. So anyway, that's ready for use, so we can mount that straight away on drive 1 if we wish. Let's try something a little bit bigger, why don't we? So let's go again, let's go into new image, which you can get at with Shift, Control and I if you want to. Let's try a 32 megabyte hard disk image. So we'll call this one HDD test ATR. See how long that one takes to do. Okay, so I think that took about 30 or 40 seconds to make. So that's a 32 megabyte disk image file. as you can see there, ready for use. We can mount that straight away if we wish, and that is ready to use. And it would be if we go into, for example, if we booted into Sparta-DOS X, we could go into the Sparta-DOS formatter and format that disk image and write files to it. So anyway, let's turn that one off. Now, one of the special folders we haven't looked at is the Autorun folder. So let's enable Autorun and let's have a look at see what we've got in the Autorun folder. We've got basic XE. Oh well, that's handy. So if we turn the machine off, and then turn it on again, and we jump into the loader, the system booted into a Sparta-DOS 3.2D disk image with basic XE pre-loaded, and that corresponds to exactly those shortcuts that we had in the Autorun folder. So let's go back into the loader just to verify that again. So there we go, we've got basic XE, a shortcut to the basic XE car file, and Sparta 32D in the Autorun folder. So it went through that folder as soon as we turned the computer on, and we started the loader when we pressed the L key. And this will work in standalone mode as well, but not so reliably with ATRs, of course. It ran both of those items and bypassed the loader completely and just boot the system. So let's do that again. So we'll start the loader. And there we've got Sparta-DOS with basic XE. So we can turn the Ultimate 1 MB PBI BIOS off, but Sparta-DOS wouldn't work there. The cartridge would load, but because Sparta-DOS lives under the operating system anyway, that wouldn't work. So that's not a good choice of DOS to use with the Ultimate 1 MB-less ATR support anyway. And if you want to add an Autorun entry for any item here, you can simply press Shift Control and A, and it'll ask if you want to add it to the Autorun. You can only have one disk image or one map file. A lot of these things aren't even implemented yet, actually. So the Autorun feature is one thing. It's so immensely complicated. I really do want to have that tested, and I expect to hear back from users saying that this doesn't work and that doesn't work and it's glitchy and things didn't work as expected. I absolutely expect that to be the case. It definitely needs more work. But as you can see, the demonstration I did there gives you an idea of how it's supposed to work. So if you have it set up to say Autorun an executable file, it can only do one executable file. Any existing shortcut in the Autorun folder that points to an executable will be removed first and replaced by the new one. What I want to add, I don't think map files work in the Autorun folder yet, and I will add some sort of ini file capability so that you can just have a text file that describes all the media that you want to mount. And you can even add Autorun entries to a folder. This almost certainly doesn't work in this beta, mind you. But eventually you'll be able to add a shortcut to a folder in the Autorun folder, and that will set the current working directory before it loads any other Autorun items. As you can see, it's very, very complicated because there's so many different execution paths and so many different ways to configure things. It's flexible in that sense, which is good, I think, but it makes it very complicated, certainly from an implementation point of view. And you can see here that we've both of our Autorun items that ran when the computer was turned on are still mounted here. We've got a modal search option here. Now when I turn this modal search option on, what we've got here is the shortcuts suddenly appear. Now this is a kind of a nod towards some of the other multi-carts, the popular multi-cartridges. I don't particularly like this. It doesn't bother me having to cursor up and down to the file that I want, but maybe some other people prefer it where you can just press the key that corresponds to the file you want to run. I know they're on the far right hand side, and maybe it's a little bit difficult to line them up, but it looked awful with them on the left hand side with these with the drive IDs and the folder icons on the left. So I've put them there for the moment anyway. So when modal, obviously with the default behavior with the search facility is you just start typing a search criteria immediately anywhere. Well, that made it impossible to have simultaneously hotkeys for the different items on the page, and of course these repeat right the way through the list. So when this mode is activated, the search facility is on control and / or question mark here. So I press that. Now I'm in search mode, you see, and it will now search things. Now if you want to use the hotkey, as you can see there's a bit of a conflict here, because as we're typing keys we're changing the search criteria. So while the search is ongoing, what you can do if you want to run one of these files here by its shortcut key, if you just press Shift and P, it'll actually run the file. So it's a bit fiddly. So when you've got modal search activated with those shortcut keys down the right hand side, and then you manually start to search for something, and the search is ongoing, obviously if you type more keys you're going to change the search criteria as you did before. But if you press Shift and the highlighted letter down the right hand side, it'll actually run that entry. That's the best thing I could come up with at the moment, but it does give you the option anyway, if you prefer, to be able to run things like that. So if we wanted to go into the OSS carts folder, we just press the M key, and there we are. And if we want to go back out, if you want to press the A key, it comes back out again. And it just means that you have to, basically, if you want to search for something, you now have to press control and / to get into the search mode, which you don't have to do when modal search is turned off, because in that case typing at the keyboard just automatically enters the search mode. So well, hopefully that's clear. I don't know if it is or not, but anyway, once you get your hands on it, you'll probably have a play with it and tell me if it's intuitive and if it makes sense. It's the best thing I could come up with at the time, just to give you the option of that different user interface. So that's a kind of a topical look at the loader. There's probably a lot of things that you might want me to go into more depth about, and I don't want this video to just turn into me yabbering on endlessly about random topics. I think the big takeaway points hopefully should be the file system. I think that's the most interesting development here, the fact that we've got a DOS that the loader puts in place when you run executables. And if you think about it, you could, if you wrote a game, for example, you could give it its own folder, so you could distribute the software as a folder, a FAT folder if you wanted to, and then the user would simply copy the folder to his FAT partition, and you could have overlays, and you could have all sorts of support files in the folder, and when the user runs the game can just access this mass storage with the D1 identifier. I know it's a big problem that game developers don't want to leave room for DOS in RAM, and Memlo was $2000 here. That's a big point of contention, I know. When you're short of memory, you don't really want to have file system. But if you want to access mass storage up to gigabytes of space here, you're going to have some kind of file system driver. And you can either write it yourself and put it somewhere in memory, and if it's going to be a FAT file system, it's going to be fairly big. Or you can just code your software to use standard DOS calls and distribute it in a folder, and the user can put it where they want on their FAT partition and run it with the loader, and the loader has full access through the CIO to the host folder and the whole file system. I don't know if that's appealing. And you don't need to have a disk image, so we don't need Ultimate 1 megabyte support. As soon as you run that executable, you're in a DOS environment, and you can access the files. You can save game data, you can write tons of information to the disk if you want to, And probably the other thing is the file management facilities, which took a lot of work, especially the file copier and that sort of stuff. I can already see improvements that can be made there. I mean, for example, certain operations work on tagged files. So if I tag those files and I call up the menu, delete and get info and copy will work on the selected group of files, but things like rename won't. They'll operate on the single highlighted file. And stuff like mount. What I think would be quite nice is if you selected a group of files and then chose mount, if the mount would step through the selection and mount the files, it would be a different way of achieving the same effect. We've still got the tab functionality so that you can set drive numbers like that. We've still got if you want to mount a set of disk images, I've still preserved the control. You used to be able to press Control and space and it would tag images with an incremental drive ID. Well, that's gone because Control and space now selects files like so. So I've moved that to Shift, Control and space. So if we do that now, we've got those 3 ATRs mounted on consecutive drive numbers. So that still works, but it's on a different shortcut. So I had to change a few things. But yeah, there's probably lots of things I've forgotten to talk about here, and as I wrote the manual, which as I say I'll link to, which I've been working on for the past, well, pretty solidly for the past fortnight, and Sebastian Candle, he's in a hurry to get on with some new hardware stuff, and that's going to require me to write a new version of the PBI BIOS. It's going to require me to make changes to this loader, because as I've hinted at before, we've got some new info here that kind of gives you a clue as to what's going on. I mean, we've got extended RAM here and PBI BIOS. That in itself should give you an idea of where this is going to go. These options aren't relevant to this particular hardware revision, so unless I want to do multiple versions of this loader, which I don't really, it's going to have to configure itself coming up to several different revisions of hardware. Certainly when the external Ultimate 1 megabyte comes out as well, this is going to be the loader, and those options won't be present there because the external Ultimate 1 megabyte will have a BIOS screen to set things up. But anyway, it's all happening, yes. And somebody asked me the other day about video playback, and I'm going to do another open request here as well. I have thought about video playback. So we've got the PDM player here, and I won't let that go on too long because I get a copyright strike. And I think I've forgotten to add joystick control to the jog facility on that player. Somebody asked me about that months ago, probably a year ago, and I still haven't done it. I'll try and remember. In fact, I'll write it down now on a piece of paper. PDM jog joystick. Okay, so that'll remind me to add that. Yeah, but video playback, somebody asked me about the other day. It's not there yet. I'm going to use DME for it. I have a pretty good idea how I'll go about it, because on an SD card we've got data tokens and stuff, so we can't just let Antic stream data off the card raw. So we're going to have to use the DME facility that's on the SIDE3 cartridge. And when I've looked at it closely, I really think we could do with a new video file format. Now that's beyond me. I haven't got the time or the skill or the know-how to use or modify the tools that Avery Farron wrote to produce those video files for the SIDE2. So I think we could do with a new video format. I'm going to need help with that. Something that probably keeps the audio data completely separate from the video, I think. That would probably be for the best, because I've got an idea about how we can interleave DMA requests and process the audio all in one chunk, while the DMA engine's getting the next chunk of audio and video data. I don't know exactly how I'm going to go about it, but it's quite the proposition. It's not a trivial thing anyway, and I don't think the current file format that Avery came up with for these videos is going to suit this device, unfortunately. So that's something we want to add. I want to add file handlers, customizable file handlers, so that files that aren't natively supported in the loader can be configured to launch some other handler application. The FMS, the little DOS module, does support, as you'll see in the manual, it supports a command line compatible with Sparta DOS and BW DOS and OSE Plus. So the way we would go about this is to register a file handler, maybe a video or maybe something else, I don't know, a MIDI file or something like that. You would need some way to configure the loader with an ini file, so that when you hit enter on, say, a MIDI file, it puts the name of the MIDI file in the command line buffer, runs the handler, and then the handler passes the command line, gets the name of the file, opens it, plays it, etc. In much the same way as you would see with Sparta Commander, I think supports the same thing. So we've got that facility there already. It's a question of getting it set up. I want to add a file viewer so that perhaps we can look at certainly text files, but maybe some image formats, that kind of thing, straight from the loader. Or they could be add-in modules as well. And possibly even a little mini text editor so that we can amend map files and that sort of thing. You remember map files, which I think they still work in this build. So there's a map file. Map files, they were a way to describe multi-disc sets with mount points. So this should work. If I press enter on Packerman Terrace map, it should mount the 2 volumes. And then when it requests the second disc, we press the button and it loads side 2. So that still works, but it's been quite badly impacted by some of the modifications. So I've got more to fix before I even release this video and release the beta, just from going through this stuff. But I knew that would be the case. It's a really good way of finding problems. Now, there's one other thing that I think has been a little bit improved here, is card compatibility. I've done a few little rewrites. It's a handy opportunity to show, in fact, another card. This is a 32GB card, which has got 2 fat partitions and an APT on it as well. So you can still open the APT, which is your Atari partition container. But yeah, so we've got a fat 16 partition there and a fat 32 partition there. So much the same as before, but this has actually got more partitions on it. And it seems to be a bit better with some of the more awkward cards. The error handling is a lot better, and I'm not... I was getting at one point, I got this error FF that isn't even a supported error code. So I'm just putting one card in after another here, some rando type of cards, Sony 8GB card here, and that's all working. Fine. There's one that doesn't work. I think it's this one favor card somebody sent in. I don't think that works. Yeah, so we get bad command. That's actually a low level error from, I don't know what that was. Very strange. Probably another bug, you see. There's a Lexar. I think this is a 1GB card. So yeah, a much better experience hot swapping cards. I just fiddled with a few things, fixed a couple of bugs that were kind of affecting the execution path. I think that's a lot better. I think you're going to have a much better experience using some different kinds of SD cards when you're using this version of the loader. So yeah, so I've got a little bit of work to do. The priority is to get this beta out and available by the time you're able to see this video, so hopefully at the weekend. Again, thanks to Steve Owens for looking at the documentation, so that's going to be continually improving. So if you hop over to my website over at atari8.co.uk, you'll see I've added a new section here under the firmware menu at the top, where you've got side loader, side 3 loader. We've got side 3 beta loader, so if you click on that, you can also get this through the main menu. I've got a new entry there, side 3 beta loader, if you don't like the drop down menus. In either case, it will bring you here. So we've got a nice picture of the side loader there, and another picture of the fat FMS DOS, and a little description of what I've been doing in my time for the past year or so. And a little list of new things that have been added to the loader, and a table. So I think it's time we had a table. Other people have got a table. Now we've got a table, and you can click that to make it a bit bigger if you want to. This is a comparison table of some popular cartridges, but of course it pertains to not the current version of the loader that's out there, but the beta version of the loader, because the beta version of the loader has more facilities on it. So this is an updated and I think perfectly fair comparison table, which compares the capabilities of the EVG cart, the Ultimate cart, the Uno cart, the SIDE2 and the SIDE3. The SIDE3 doesn't do ATX support or cassette support, it never will, and it currently doesn't have video playback, but every other category is an affirmative, and there's some qualifiers here, and I think it clarifies a few things that might be confusing for the user. Now, down at the bottom here, here's the latest draft of the SIDE3 manual. This is brand new, completely written from scratch. It's got table of contents, it's got proper numbered headings and stuff like that. And if you click on the relevant section, it takes you straight to it, so it's got hyperlinks. And it describes the loader. It's got lots of errors in it and omissions and things like that I'm trying to work through to get sorted out. So if the stuff's wrong, or you see a typo or something, that's perfectly natural. I'm working through those as we go. I've got a local copy of this manual here, which Steve Owens is helping me with, and so we'll get it all cleaned up and make things a little bit clearer where I can. But I spent a couple of weeks just fleshing the thing out with content. It's got lavish illustrations, it's got a whole section on DOS, and of course remember, this isn't Sparta DOS, this has got nothing to do with Sparta DOS. This is a brand new fat DOS that was written specially for the loader. And then we've got the, if we go down here, we've got the programming with FAT-FMS, and it describes all the CIO calls, the XIO commands and stuff that you can use in your own programs, with some examples there, so you can use these in your basic programs, your assembly language programs, in much the same way as you would with any other disk operating system. There's the user accessible data table. I mentioned in the video that it supports command line arguments, and there's all the publicly accessible variables there, error codes, a little bit of technical information which I'll expand on when I get time, future development, and references, of which there are many. Obviously we couldn't live without some of these manuals and resources. Absolutely great stuff. Some technical stuff about FAT and SD cards, and a table of figures. So that's currently coming in at a modest 75 pages anyway. So you can go down there, you can read the manual, or you can just have a glance through it, hop through the table of contents. I'll probably add an index and glossaries and stuff at some point. I want to try and tread the line between the thing being absolutely enormous and being too brief. So I'll do some sort of quick start guide. But yeah, I mean, it's just a question of time. It's just it's an enormous amount of effort, and sometimes I just don't know what to do first. But writing the manual was a very useful exercise, because just like when I make videos about the beta loader, in writing the manual, it forces you to think about how things work and how things should work, and whether they work in the way that they're designed to work. And obviously I noticed various problems as I went along and fixed them along the way, but making the video threw up yet more problems. So this is the nature of the thing anyway. So hopefully you'll go along and have a look at that, and the manual will be changing all the time, the beta will be changing all the time. So by the time this video is online, obviously, as well as the manual, there'll be a download link for the beta itself as well. Hopefully I'll receive some new hardware from Sebastian shortly.
You serious?
So that I can start work on that. Thank you very much to new patrons. I think we've got a couple of new patrons. Thank you very, very much for your support. I do really, really appreciate it. I've had so many kind emails. Just recently, a very nice little donation, just because I helped somebody out in an email discussion. I don't mind doing that at all. I don't expect anything for that, as long as it doesn't become completely overwhelming. You know, emailing every 5 minutes. I don't mind answering questions, technical questions and things like that. And the experience, it's given me ideas as to where documentation's deficient, how it could be improved, and hopefully that's going to be addressed with when the manual is finished for this. I'm really sorry that I've kept everybody waiting so long for this beta, but you can probably appreciate the magnitude of the project. It's enormous. There are, in the listing output file from the MADS assembler, obviously some of it's white space and stuff like that, space between procedures, but it's 45,000 lines long of assembler. I think that's at the upper end of what's manageable, even with modern cross-development tools. It's just enormous. There's multiple source files in Woodson and Eclipse, which I use. Peter Dell, great stuff. And there's so many convenient facilities for managing all these source files. It's absolutely brilliant, but it's still huge. The files are massive. I think they're in the megabyte range now. It's just enormous. So keeping track of this stuff, and of course with the excellent Altera emulator and the debugger, would be totally lost without that stuff. Totally lost. And obviously Avery implemented emulation for SIDE3, thank God. Yeah, be totally lost without that stuff. But even with all these facilities, 45,000 lines of source code, it's getting a bit much. And it's only going to get bigger. So managing all that, and obviously when I see something that doesn't work quite right, sometimes it's an easy fix. But the other night I was trying to film this video and I ran into a real stinker straight away. And sometimes it's like that. It's necessarily very complicated, because when you just when you run a file, and if it's got to log it in the history folder, or it's a shortcut and it's got to look up the target, and it's got to set the working directory and then load the file management system. It's bloody complicated. But in any case, if you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up if you want to. Share the video, and I'd love to hear your comments down below. What you didn't like about the presentation, what you did like about the presentation, maybe what things we could focus on in the future, or ideas, in fact, about the loader itself. I'd love to hear them all. So so with that, I'll bring it to a close. Thank you very much again. Thank you for your support. Thank you to the patrons. And thank you for watching. And with luck, I will see you in the next video. So bye bye for now.